go join the Hovind tab over there. Good afternoon, everyone. This is an exciting season of our year. We are heading up now on the 250th anniversary, a celebration for our country. And I think I can say that we are very fortunate to live in the greatest land, in my view, in the history of the world. And we can be enormously thankful and grateful to those who have come before us, who have sacrificed and served to make that possible for the rest of us. And as we think about this 250th anniversary, it's also a good time to reflect on many of the things that we've been able to accomplish and the issues that we've been trying to address here in the United States Senate. First and foremost, of course, right now, as you know, is the housing bill. Just passed. It's going to be taken up by the House later and hopefully signed into law by the President. It gets at the very heart of an issue that I think is really important to the American people, and that's the issue of affordability. You know, home ownership has always been considered to be part of that American dream, and to be able to you know, put your flag in the ground and have some place where you can take care of your family. This legislation is going to make that more possible, and I can't think of anything that is a better way to celebrate the 250th anniversary of this country than making it easier for people to pursue the American dream of home ownership. And as we think about wrapping up this session of the Congress, and as we get into the upcoming election, Republicans continue to stay focused on keeping our country safe, on safe streets, on having the American people have more money in their pockets and better opportunities to get ahead. That's what our focus has been and will continue to be, and we look forward to you know, the days ahead and hopefully more victories for the American people. Senator Barrasso, the whip.
Well, we are getting ready to celebrate the 250th birthday of the nation, and of course it's the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. When you take a look at this, it's as iconic. It is a piece of art. It is a masterpiece, and I believe that we don't read it and go to it frequently enough. Basically, it's a letter of complaint to the King of England, and it says, you've done this and you've done this and you've done that, and we are now done with you. People were very religious. They talk 4 times in this about the Creator. We are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It says the power comes from God, not from the king. And then we as individuals loan that power to the government. It talks about freedom, it talks about liberty, and we use those words interchangeably. But in fact, they're different. Freedom is we're freedom to say and do and think what we want. Liberty means those are guaranteed, protected rights that we all have. 56 individuals signed this. The oldest was Ben Franklin, and he was 70. 3 people signed it who were 26 years old. Of course, right down there is John Hancock. The famous John Hancock signed it in the center, saying the king could see who it was. He'd be the one that he'd come after first. There's a man named Stephen Hopkins, and you see his signature, and he was moving his hand, and it's crooked, and he wrote it in a way. He said, you know, because he had a tremor, a medical tremor, and he said, my hand trembles, my heart does not. They end this by saying, we pledge our life, our fortunes, and our sacred honor, and they pledge it to each other and to all of us. And as a result of 250 years, we have had freedom, liberty, and American greatness, and because of this great document, our best days are still ahead.
And let me just reiterate, that was 250 years ago. A year ago, we passed the Working Families Tax Cuts legislation, and we will celebrate the 1-year anniversary of that on July 1st here in the Senate. But one of the things that came out of that were these Trump accounts, and those Trump accounts go live on July 4th, and that's an opportunity for people in this country to save and to provide a better future for their kids. And so that was just one feature of the many that were included in that legislation. And so we will be celebrating 250 years of American history and freedom, and the sacrifices that those who came before us made. We'll also be celebrating the one-year anniversary of the Working Families Tax Cuts legislation.
Leader Thune, you've expressed your frustrations with the president about how he handled FISA, about how he handled Jay Clayton, dealing with the fund for the rioters. Do you have to express to the president some of your frustration with him, the idea that he's been jerking the Senate around the past couple of weeks?
Look, we have very candid conversations. I am very direct with the president. I shoot straight with him, and vice versa. And, we at times have differences of opinion, but I think the important thing is the issues that really matter to the future of this country and to the American people, we have been united on. And we continue, as we move forward, to look for those opportunities where this team can pull together, House, Senate, and President and his team in the White House, on issues that are going to make this country safer and stronger and more prosperous. And so the conversations that we have about those issues are regular. And yes, and sometimes we have differences of opinion, but the one thing that we all agree on is we have an alignment of incentives. And as I said before, that's to keep the country safe, to put more money in the pockets of the American people, and to give them better opportunities to get ahead.
Are you okay with the firings that are underway in the Intelligence Committee by Bill Pulte and Senator Cotton? Are you okay with those firings as well?
Well, look, I think that there is a general agreement among Republicans and Democrats, as I had this conversation with Democrats as well, that there are things about the Office of D&I that can be made more efficient, more effective, and streamlined. And frankly, I think that's something that many of us agree on. And how they go about that obviously is something that we'll want to have some visibility into, and Senator Cotton and his committee and the rest of us here who care about intelligence and national security matters, I expect will have some input into that. But I think it's fair to say that there is a consensus view around here that it is time for the ODNI to be scaled down. We've got great intelligence services in this country, and at least that's my view, and I can't speak for everybody here, but the conversations I've had with people suggest to me that there is an interest in doing something that makes that agency more effective and more efficient. I don't know.
Senator Cotton, those firings?
The ODNI has employees mostly from other intelligence agencies. I think in the most cases, they would be better off doing real intelligence work at those agencies. That's returning intelligence officers to their agencies. I have a plan for that. I've worked with the administration on it. Some of it happened under Director Gabbard. It's going to continue under Acting Director Pulte. Once we confirm Director Clayton, I'm sure it will continue as well. The ODNI is too big and too bloated.
Leader Thune, are you concerned that any agreement that's made with Iran, that you won't be able to trust Iran to actually follow through with any agreement that you end up coming, or the United States ends up coming with them to end this war?
I think any agreement with the Iranians is, again, it's the trust but verify. I just don't think that these are people who have a history and have proven in the past not to be honest brokers or be trustworthy. But that's why I think it's important that you have compliance and enforcement mechanisms in place in any agreement that we reach with them that ensures that anything that they get, in relief or economic support in any way, is conditioned upon them winding down and getting rid of their nuclear program. I think that's something a lot of us agree on.
The Democrats are demanding, as you know, a 2-year extension in state requirements to pay into SNAP. That is the price that they're trying to exact for supporting the Farm Bill. You sit on the Ag Committee. What is your sense of whether it's going to take a party line vote to get Chairman Bozeman's bill out of that committee, and do you expect to struggle to get the 60 votes on the floor for cloture on a Farm Bill?
My understanding is that the bill that will be reported out of the Senate Ag Committee does not include a provision dealing with SNAP. I think most of us believe that SNAP, like many other programs, benefits from reforms. And I think there were reforms in the bill we passed last summer, some of which are work requirements. And by the way, those work requirements were less strenuous, less restrictive than the work requirements included in the Clinton administration 30 years ago. But I think that that's something that most Americans agree with. And I think that those types of reforms are reforms that ought to take effect. And then there were some reforms that dealt with how states were using the program, and there were states that were taking advantage of it and abusing the program. So I think those reforms were a big part of what we did last summer. I think they're reforms that the American people largely would support. And so I would hope that we can execute on moving a farm bill based upon the components of that farm bill and not try and undo something we did last summer that many of us supported and agree with because we believe they're the right policies.
What is Congress's role in approving whatever comes out of this deal with Iran in 60 days? What do you hope the Senate will do?
Well, I think the Senate, we're obviously, many of us are anxious to hear more about it, which we hope to. Many of the people who would brief us on that are overseas right now involved in the negotiations. But, you know, my assumption is that, as always, there are certain notification requirements that are included in legislation that we passed that we have voted on in the past. And if there is some deal that is struck, I would expect at some point Congress would have some sort of vote on it. And whether that's a resolution of disapproval or something, I don't know the answer to that. One more.
Congress should have visibility.
GOP senators tomorrow. What do you expect out of that? And can you respond to the Dear Colleague letter that Senator Scott sent out?
I think that there are many things that were mentioned probably in that letter that all of us are supportive of. I think the question is we have to figure out how do we maximize our opportunity, optimize the chance to get as much done as we can in the amount of time that we have left between now and the midterm elections. And so as you look at what that agenda consists of, there are a number of things that could get slotted in. Now, first and foremost, I would argue, is our defense authorization bill, which hopefully we'll be able to take up as soon as we come back after the 4th of July. But there are a number of other issues that could ripen, and that depend largely on whether or not they have bipartisan support. But I'm hoping that as we sit down and meet as a family, as a team, that we can look at some of the things that we all want to work together on to try and get done before this election. And there are things that I believe will create a record of accomplishment that our candidates can run on and that will enable us to take an argument to the American people that will persuade them that they want to keep majorities here in Congress, in the United States Senate, and in the House that are Republican, to work with this president to get good things done for this country. So it's a, you know, what exactly those are, I've got a list, we've got a list. It's all going to depend largely on what comes together in the next few weeks. But I can assure you we're going to be active and busy and trying to create that record of accomplishment.
Will you be at the meeting, sir? Will you be at the meeting, sir?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for waiting. Thank you to Senators Blumenthal and Klobuchar for joining us, or Klobuchar and Blumenthal, not seniority but leadership. Got to get it the right way. For joining us today. Look, everywhere you look, the Republicans are one big hot mess. Everywhere. So many different things. Donald Trump's agenda of cost, chaos, corruption is terrible for America, and it's despised by the American people. Look at this failed and reckless war. What did Americans get out of the last 100 days of this war? Well, a $100 billion bill, 13 lives lost, 500 people injured, gas prices up, inflation up. Iran, they're the big winners. Trump was such a poor negotiator, they just took him to the cleaners. $300 billion fund, sanctions relief, more control over Hormuz than he had before it started, and a more radical, emboldened regime. That's not strength, it's surrender. So Americans got worse than nothing from this war. We're worse off than before it started. And that's precisely why Trump, Rubio, and Vance are too afraid to come before the American people and the whole Senate to defend this war and the so-called understanding. Instead, Trump only will talk to Senate Republicans behind closed doors, and from what it looks like, that ain't going to be pretty. Senate Republicans need to grill Trump for answers on where negotiations stand when he meets them on the Capitol tomorrow. More than a week after announcing side deals and so-called understandings with Iran, the administration still has not briefed Congress or the American people on what has been agreed to. Wishful thinking won't end this war, and certainly Senate Republicans' calls to pump billions, hundreds of billions of dollars more into Trump's fiasco will make matters worse. Republicans can't complain about Trump's war, his secrecy, his disastrous deal with Iran, and all of it behind closed doors. But the only way to ensure this war ends once and for all is for Republicans to act, to join us in voting to end this war. Any minute now, we're once again going to put Republicans on record on whether they want Trump's disastrous war to continue by forcing a vote on the Iran War Powers Resolution for the first time. We have forced this fight on the floor again and again and again for more than 100 days because only Congress has the power to take our nation to war, not Trump alone. Republicans need to support our War Powers Resolution. We're just one vote short. And they need to hold Trump's feet to the fire in their meeting tomorrow. Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you, Chuck. So what is this about? The administration, according to the Association Press today, because we've been trying to figure out how much this war costs, has spent somewhere in the neighborhood of $80 billion. That's an AP report. Maybe a bit less, maybe a bit more. That's a lot of money. You add that to the $70 billion they just put out in extra funding to ICE, that would be $150 billion. This is not where Americans are right now. This is not what they want them to be spending their money on. What do they care about? Well, inflation is eating up any wage increase that they have. This month's inflation report showed inflation up 4.2%, another record high under President Trump. There was just a recent report by NPR and PBS, a poll showing that 49% of Americans aren't taking a summer vacation for one reason, and that's because they can't afford it. That's a lot of people. So what should we be doing with this kind of money? Well, the first is something we actually did, thanks to leadership, thanks to Senator Warren, Senator Scott, and others, is housing. That was a Senate-led bill, and there's a lot of work that went on it in the House, the Road to Housing bill, but it gives you an example. Imagine if this president was focused on what the American people want done, and that is to bring their costs down and to reduce the chaos of his administration and the corruption. They don't want to be talking every day about algae in the reflecting pool. They don't want to be talking about cage matches and arches and ballrooms. Instead, what are they dealing with? They're dealing with rising health care costs. New polling from Gallup, fewer than half of Americans could afford quality health care last year. More than 4 in 10 already carry medical debt. So what did they do? They refused to extend the tax credits for the Affordable Care Act. You know what that has meant? A bunch of Americans, millions of people, have had to lose their coverage. Just that one decision. He literally sent money to Argentina, the same amount of money as would have been spent on a year of Affordable Care Act tax credits. These are misplaced priorities. Instead of the $80 billion estimated on this war, we could extend those health care premium tax cuts for 2 more years. Another thing Americans want us to focus on, child care. 80% say the ability to find or afford child care is a major problem. Senate Democrats have come out with a plan to bring down child care costs, to actually do something about this. But what is President Trump talking about? His reflecting pool, his name on the Kennedy Center. So as we come upon the anniversary of this country, of which we are proud, the 250th anniversary, we also sadly come on another birthday, and that is the big, beautiful betrayal of a bill is 1 year old next week. And what has that meant? More than 4 million people, including over 800,000 children, have lost access to affordable food through SNAP. 481 hospitals have closed or are closing, with more to come because of the Medicaid costs. So let's get real about what is going on in this country and what this president should have as his priorities, and that is the American people.
Thank you. Thank you. To the American people, this administration has consistently, constantly concealed and lowballed the costs of this war. As a member of the Armed Services Committee, I can tell you this number is only a portion of what the cost to taxpayers have been. But of course, the tax and the cost to taxpayers are also at the grocery stores, at the gas pump, purchases of everything from mattresses to medical devices, and in lives. It isn't only Americans who have lost their lives. There are thousands of Iranians who have been buried. The cost is measured in graves of Americans and Iranians who would be alive today but for this disastrous war. And to our standing in the world, our credibility around the world has been undercut. The Chinese are watching, and so is the rest of the world, how lame and inadequate our bargaining position has become in these negotiations. It isn't only that we are providing sanctions relief worth tens of billions of dollars or unfreezing of assets, which is a windfall. It is the timing. Their benefits are up front. We are on our back foot. We are sacrificing our leverage in these negotiations by giving away a lot of our leverage in the sanctions and the frozen assets that now will be released to the Iranians to be used as they wish, not to buy American agricultural products. So I hope we are going to have a permanent peace. I hope we can avoid a restart of this disastrous, unnecessary conflict. But it will depend on smart, strategic negotiations and on a determination to have peace, not imaginary or magical thinking. Republicans should join us this afternoon in this war powers resolution. It is the path for Congress to signal that we want an end to this conflict and for bipartisan support in ending it. American families can't afford this administration's magical thinking any longer. The war powers resolution should pass today. I hope these negotiations will be successful, but ultimately the linchpin will be verification, inspection. The disagreement that has come out of Switzerland between Vance and the Iranians is profoundly important as a signal for what is ahead. Because if the Iranians don't allow ironclad, airtight inspection, there will be no agreement, and any agreement should come to Congress. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Republicans contend that the Save America Act is popular with the public here. Do you worry that they could try to boomerang this on some of your vulnerable members by saying that you're not for this bill?
The American people know what a disaster this is. They know that it would remove 20 million people from the voting rolls. And so the American people are totally on our side on this issue. Yes.
What do you think of Israel's role in this attempted MOU agreement where they're bombing Lebanon? Ben-Gvir has come out and said we should not
Look,
adhere to it.
this war is disgusting, and we hate it, and it should be ended immediately. Yes, back there. Listen, this is all up to the Republicans. As long as Pulte is there, there's not going to be any FISA agreement. It's up to them to get rid of him. I hope at the lunch tomorrow the Republicans make that clear to them. Yes.
Do you plan on endorsing Graham Plattner? Do you think he wants your endorsement?
Look, the bottom line is we are going to beat Susan Collins and we are going to win the Senate.